Welcome to Fantasia, home of the Melodious. My name's Azallea, and today, gonna be bringing you guys another update to my Windwitch deck. So without any further ado, let's just jump right into this. So starting off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Windwitch Icespell, and she's the main Windwitch monster, because when you control a monster and you special summon her, you can tutor out any Windwitch monster from your deck. And the monster you're pretty much going to be summoning all the time is going to be a copy of Windwitch Glassbell. And when Windwitch Glassbell is summoned, you can search out a Windwitch monster from your deck, which is pretty nice, and we're going to add a copy of Windwitch Snowbell from our deck to our hand, which we're playing 2 copies of. So I like the ratio of 3, 3, and 2 because the fact that this deck is more of Windwitch centered instead of just running Windwitches as an engine. The engine typically consists of 3, 2, and 1, but I'm running 3, 3, and 2 because you want to see them in circulation more often. You always want to have something to be able to summon with Icespell and something to be able to search with your Glassbell. And I'll also get into why I'm running 3 Glassbell in just a moment, but yeah, that's basically all of the Windwitches that we run because those are all the ones that are available to us for the main deck. Okay, so for the engines that we run, we're running 1 copy of Speedroid Terratop, which allows us to tutor out a copy of Speedroid Takatomborg from our deck. So we're playing 3 copies of Speedroid Takatomborg because of the fact that it works really, really well with Windwitch Glassbell. So if you have Glassbell and Takatomborg in your hand, that's another way for you to go ahead and access your Crystal Wing, because you normal summon your Glassbell, you'll search out your Snowbell, you can special summon Takatomborg from your hand because you control Wind Monster, and then because you control 2 Wind Monsters on your side of the field, you can summon your Snowbell out and then just go ahead and climb into your Crystal Wing. So having an alternative way to access your boss monster in the deck is actually very good, and it adds a lot of consistency to your plays and to how often you can make your first turn boards. Now, we're also playing 2 copies of Spellbook Magician of Prophecy. I do play the Spellbook engine in this deck, and I'll get to the spells in just a bit, but this Spellbook engine adds a lot of draw power to the deck, which helps you try to dig into your Icespell, which is very nice. And yeah, it's basically going to be the main normal summon of your deck as well, so that's why he's in there at 2 instead of just at 1. Okay, to wrap up the monsters, we're just playing 2 copies of Effect Veiler and 2 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. I want to diversify the hand traps in this deck because the fact that it's more stun oriented. It's very like control based. This build is, so having 3 copies of Ghost Ogres kind of suck because you don't want to draw into both of these. If you drew into like 2 Ghost Ogres, you can still only activate 1 a turn. And Effect Veiler is kind of nice because it's also a spellcaster, so if you really didn't have anything for your Spellbook engine to go off with, you could always normal summon this and go off with that, and hopefully draw into like a Icespell or something of the sort. But yeah, that's it for the hand traps. Next off, we're going to go ahead and go into the spell cards. So for these spell cards, we're starting off with the Spellbook Draw Engine. So we're playing 2 copies of Spellbook of Secrets and 3 copies of Spellbook of Knowledge. Now this is basically like a Pot of Greed type of draw engine for the deck, and you just really want to continuously generate resources. This deck tries to outgrind the opponent a lot, so having access to more cards is always really good. Now, of course, speaking of having draw power, we're also playing 2 copies of Pot of Desires for additional draw power. I didn't include this in previous builds. I'm not really sure why. I probably forgot about it, but having Pot of Desires is really nice because of the fact that we also run a higher Windwitch count than just the typical Windwitch engine. You're pretty much never going to be banishing all of the important pieces that you need, and you'll get at least 1 Crystal Wing out into circulation because of it, which is pretty nice. And if you use the Desires after you get your Crystal Wing out, you're basically just able to dig for more powerful spells and traps. Speaking of powerful spells, we're also playing 2 copies of Scapegoat, and Scapegoat here is just really important because of the fact that it allows you to access a lot more extra deck plays. It puts more bodies on the field for you in order to go and push for some damage. You don't always have to rely on Crystal Wing to win the game. Next off, we were running actually a couple of one-ofs, so I'll just spread these out, I guess. We'll play 1 copy of Upstart Goblin, 1 copy of Monster Reborn, 1 copy of Soul Charge, and a copy of Dark Hole, and 1 copy of Raigeki. So these are one-ofs that we run. Upstart Goblin is just a filler, so it's really easy for you to side deck out things if you need them. Because of the fact that our engines are very important to the deck, you don't really want to dismantle those. Monster Reborn and Soul Charge allow you to go ahead and recover things like your Crystal Wings, your Link monsters from your graveyard, and just puts additional bodies on the field to help you push for some more damage. We also have Raigeki and Dark Hole for the field clears, because even though this deck likes to go first, sometimes you are forced to go second if you lose a dice roll, and it's just nice to have options to go ahead and clear the way before you go ahead and make your own plays. So yeah, that pretty much wraps it up for the spell cards. Next off, we're going to go into some of the trap cards that we run. Okay, so for the trap cards, it's a fairly simple lineup. We're playing 3 copies of Storming Mirror Force. Storming Mirror Force is a very, very good card, especially because now that people are starting to play a lot more Lynx in their extra decks, and Lynx cannot put themselves into defense mode, so when they attack and you flip the Storming, it's going to return all of that stuff back to the extra deck and clears the way for you, actually, and it's very nice. Because the fact that things like Borreload, things like Decode Talker, they're fairly easy to summon for most decks, and they're really consistent outs to Crystal Wing, actually. Storm Mirror Force is a great way to just shut down all of those outs, and then it'll make all their efforts fruitless, essentially. Okay, so next off, we're playing 3 copies of Solemn Strike. Of course, we're playing the Solemn Brigade in this deck, so we're also playing 1 copy of Solemn Warning and 1 copy of Solemn Judgment. These cards are just absolutely amazing. They're devastating powerhouse cards, and they can shut down your opponent's plays. They can, interrupt their summons, they can interrupt their hand traps, card effects, and all that good stuff. It's just really, really nice. And because of the fact that we run Desires and things like that, we can easily try to draw into these after we've established our Crystal Wing. So yeah, that does it for the main deck. Next off, we're just going to jump right into the extra deck. Alright, so for the extra deck, starting off, we're going to be playing 1 copy of Link Spider. Link Spider is really just here for the scapegoat tokens, so you can just make Link Spider has a down arrow, and more likely than not, you're going to be summoning something like a Proxy Dragon that's under it. Proxy Dragon under the Link Spider is pretty nice because of the fact that when you have 4 scapegoat tokens, use 1 for Link Spider and 2 for Proxy. Just make sure when you summon Proxy, you have another scapegoat token that's next to it, so that you can protect your board from destruction effects and things like that by just tributing the token off instead. We're also playing 1 copy of Underclock Taker. This is really just here for utility. If you summon like an XYZ monster or something like that and is blocking your extra monster zone, this is a fairly easy way to just clear it out, and it gives you a down arrow so you can go ahead and summon something under it if you so desire. The next card that we run is going to be 2 copies of Mrs. Radiant. This is here again because of Scapegoat. If you summon Mrs. Radiance, you'll basically be summoning 2 at a time. So what you'll do is 2 tokens for Mrs. Radiant, and then under the Mrs. Radiant you'll summon another one, and then it basically just boosts their attack points by 1,000 because each of them boosts Earth monsters by 500 attack. And then they'll basically both reach 2,400 attack points, which is actually pretty nice to use as beat sticks. And when they do leave the field and get destroyed, you just put them back into your extra deck. So if you have another scapegoat, you can just go ahead and summon them out yet again. So that's pretty good. For the high Link monsters, we're playing 1 copy of Decode Talker and 1 copy of Gaia Saber, the Lightning Shadow. And Decode Talker is here so you can just kind of upgrade, Link Spider Proxy Dragon into this as like a little beat stick that you can use. It can really easily out like very high attack monsters, things like Masterpiece and stuff, And the Gaia Saber is here because of the fact that you sometimes want to get rid of the Crystal Wing that's in your extra monster zone to go for more utility plays for your, like basically toolbox out of your extra deck. So if you flip Scapegoat, you can use 2 of the tokens and your Crystal Wing to summon out your Gaia, and then you'll have 2 tokens left over to go ahead and, make whatever else you might need. Proxy to extend plays, Mrs. Radiant, you can't make Underclock Taker, but like you can make Mrs. Radiant and things like that as well. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the Link monsters. Next off, we're going to go into the XYZs, and then, of course, the Synchros. So for the XYZs, it's fairly standard, simple lineup. For the Speedroids, it's just 1 copy of Totem Bird and 1 copy of the Phantom Knights of Breaksword. Totem Bird's a pretty decent first turn play, actually. Just make sure that you don't get completely wiped out by things like Evenly Mashed and stuff. Also just really good for just negating Pendulum Scales and things. Breaksword is like a going second kind of card, because what you can do is you can use your Terratop and Takatomborg, make your Breaksword, and then pop the Breaksword in like a card that your opponent controls, and then you can clear your board and clear out your opponent's board to go ahead for your Ice Spell plays, make sure that that thing goes through. But also, this is a pretty good way of outing Floodgates as well. It's kind of like a Tornado Dragon, but this deck can't make rank 4s very consistently, so this can out things like Anti-Spell and whatever that you might not like on the field. Okay, so next off, we're going to go into some of the Synchros. Starting off, we're playing 1 copy of Stardust Charge Warrior. This card is pretty good because of the fact that you just make it with Glass Spell and like 2 Scapegoat tokens, so it's fairly easy to make, and it's pretty decent because of the fact that if you make something like your, where was it? Your Gaia Saber right here, If you make Gaia Saber with something like your Crystal Wing, and then 2 of your Scapegoat tokens, if you normal summon Glass Spell, and you could go for a search, using 2 tokens and your Glass Spell, you can summon your Stars Charge Warrior right under it. And this is really a really good setup to help clear out your opponent's board if they have a lot of small monsters that are special summoned, because Stars Charge Warrior can just attack everything once each, and then Gaia Saber can swing for some damage directly. So that's just a utility play that's available to us if Crystal Wing's just not able to clear out the field by himself. Okay, so next off we're playing 1 copy of Windwitch Winterbell and 1 copy of Clearwing Synchro Dragon. These are level 7s that you're going to go into in order to help you climb into your Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. So typically if you have something like Monster Reborn, Soul Charge, and things like that, you're going to go for your Clearwing first, and then climb into your Crystal Wing, because then you can Reborn Clearwing, and that basically is additional protection for your Crystal Wing. It protects it from targeting effects and things like that. But if you don't open up with like those revival cards and things, you can always go for Winterbell. Just be careful about using her effect, because sometimes your opponent's just holding the Ghost Ogre waiting for you to activate her effect. So you can always dodge it by just like not using her effect. Just summon her, send her to the grave, and then synchro with the Snowbell and go ahead for the Crystal Wing. And the last card we play in the extra deck is going to be Stardust Dragon. This almost really never comes up, but it's here for utility, just in case you need to summon something to help protect your back row and stuff like that, or if your opponent just has like recurring destruction effects and things based on whatever archetype they're playing, Stardust Dragon might come in handy there. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the extra deck, and that does it for the deck profile. So thank you all so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please leave a like, subscribe for more Windwitch content, and leave a comment down below letting me know what I can do to improve. And until next time, take care.